The following session was recorded live in San Antonio, Texas for the 2003 CALLERLAB Conference. This is tape number 13, New Caller Session.
Thanks, sir. All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the 30th Annual CALLERLAB Convention. You are in San Antonio, Texas, regardless of how it's spelled. It's April of 2003. We need a nice lead-in on these tapes so that we know where we're at. This session is entitled New Callers. It's also experimental. We've not had this session before. We've kicked around a few times, maybe a need for it. And it's going to be pretty much open to anything that all of you wish to talk about as we get going. It's kind of an experimental trial run, like I said. If it goes well, if we get good feedback from you guys, we might try to schedule one next year. It could have perhaps had a little better description in the direction than it did. We don't know. But we do welcome you here. Yeah, we didn't know what it was supposed to be. My name is Larry Cole. I get the honor of being your moderator. We got two fine panelists today. Patty Greene to my right, who is well known as a caller at home, gaining a reputation around, and well known to those of us in CALLERLAB for the work that she does for us. If you look at the CALLERLAB website, much of the navigation features that you can't see on the screen, but that it makes it work good for you, Patty accomplished. If you look at the foundation website, everything you see, Patty did. And it's a super job, and we appreciate her work for that. To my left is Martin Mallard from Canada. Martin is a member of the Board of Governors right now, past member of the Executive Committee, and an accredited caller coach. Martin and Terry, his wife, as a team in Canada, are well known as long-standing, big-time leaders in the area and very well respected, and we appreciate having him with us also. Would you give these presenters a nice hand? We have some introductory remarks from both, and we'll let Patty go first.
Introductory remarks. Oh. First, how many brand spanking new callers are here? Just to see anybody brand spanking new. Year or so? Year or so? Well, you could be never picked up a microphone before and just decided to come along for the ride. 5 to 7 years? Anybody? Under 5. Oh, under 5. 1 to 5. 4. Great. And any really wise sages calling for a long time? Okay. I was asked to be part of this panel to present a new caller workshop. It's a new offering, I was told, so anything goes, which certainly narrows the topic down, right? Presenting information that would be useful for a new caller takes up a week according to CALLERLAB's Caller School guidelines and covers a dauntingly broad brush for someone like me to help facilitate. I've been calling for about 7 years now and still consider myself a new caller, and I always hope to be a new caller, actually, since new caller implies that you are still in the learning curve, and I expect that I will always be in that learning curve. I started out by doing singing calls, first with our workshop teacher, then with a local caller at convention and his dances. Then I went to my first caller school. And that was almost the end of my calling career. I had so much information thrown at me in a very short period of time that I didn't think I would ever master it all. I was completely overwhelmed and discouraged. Spent my first real year spinning my wheels until I went the next year to the same school. I was finished with my short-lived career as a square dance caller when I went to that school. However, the calling god smiled down on me, and I got the most important piece of advice that made everything make sense. I was told to use whatever tools were at my disposal that I was comfortable with to entertain the dancers and let them dance. Everything else would fall into place with time, repetition, and experience. You mean I didn't have to do perfect choreography on the fly that was flawless and that nobody else had done and that was completely innovative and new and all those things that you're told you have to do? Cool. I was psyched. So as I started thinking about what we could do on this panel, I thought back to my first attempts at calling and to my first couple of caller school. What do I wish they had told me then, right up front, that would have been useful to me as I started this venture? What kind of information would have been helpful to me as a new caller, aside from the mechanics of calling? I was personally overwhelmed with the mechanics of resolving a square, how to use scoop back or slide through effectively, that 1-2 P2 primary couple, secondary couple, isolated site, you got to be kidding me stuff. All valid things, but way too overwhelming. And what about the other stuff, the little stuff, the things that you don't learn, but you don't get explicitly taught them in any school? So we aren't going to tell you the best way to resolve a square, or give you creative ways to teach scoot back, or even hints or suggestions on how to program a dance in this session. Instead, hopefully we'll share some helpful hints with you on some of the other things. Some may be repetitious, but most are worth hearing again and again, just the little things that you don't hear about.
Thank you, Patty. Martin Mallard.
This might be a little differently, but what Patty said is very, very true. I went through the same things. Have you ever wondered what square dancing was like 47 years ago? Because that's how long I've been calling. We were just getting underway, really. And when we started, we had 25 basics to teach. And we had to learn them in 6 weeks. From there, we went into a senior club. And I really was a terrible dancer. Do Paso broke my mind. For myself, after 6 weeks or more of calling, the caller there told us, I'm starting a caller school. And because I didn't know how to dance, I was stupid enough to think if I went to learn to call, I would probably become a good dancer. So I went there for 6 weeks, and at the end of 6 weeks, I was a caller. And I had a certificate to prove it. Anyways, I was young, and I was brash, and tried all the things that went with it. And at that end of that time, the caller said to me, Martin, he says, I've got a possible club for you. Would you like to do it? I dashed out and bought myself a little 10-watt amplifier, had a little variable speed thing on it, would play 45s. Didn't have a car, so I had to take the streetcar to get up where the club was. I found out it was in a psychiatric ward at the university hospital. Things haven't changed much, really. But it was probably the best experience I ever had, because those people forgot everything I ever taught. I come back the next week, they didn't know my name, didn't know what they were there for or anything else. So it was a good experience. One of the things I've been asked as a caller, and you've probably asked your callers this question too, if you were not a square dance caller today, would you consider taking it up? I'm not sure. The reason for that, we take 30 to 40 weeks to train dancers, which is a bit of a laugh in my mind too, because they're getting overloaded learning that. And yet when it comes to training callers in a caller school, we give them 40 hours of training, and we give them a certificate and send them out on their happy way, hoping that they learned something and became a caller. Some of them become very successful, but wow. And Patty has made a little statement that's rather interesting. She says, things they don't teach in caller school. And this is probably more true than we realize. We have 21 subjects that we cover in a caller school in those 40 hours. And one of the things I find that we don't teach, and it's hard to even visualize teaching it, is teaching zeal, enthusiasm, loyalty, comfort on the stage, and all the little things that go into making a person not just a caller, but a person who will continue day after day, night after night, with dedication to a pastime that is there to produce enjoyment for the participants as well as enjoyment for the instructor. How do we teach those things? And in 1974, now I'd been calling for a few years, almost 20 years, CALLERLAB had its first convention. And, no, I'd been calling 9 years, I guess, at that time. And after all, I came from Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I bet half of you can't even say it. And I would guess that I was much like most of you sitting here, looking up on the stage and saying, who are those old farts? I happened to think that at that time. Now I are one. But really, those guys were great callers. They had the dream to get this going. And I asked one of them, Bruce Johnson, who some of you might remember. How many have ever heard of Bruce Johnson? He did a lot of great recordings, great piano player, come out of the California area. How long will it take me to become a caller? His answer was interesting. He said, you can learn 50% of what you need, which will get you enough to be a reasonable caller, and the rest of it will take the rest of your life, if you stick with it long enough. I'm sort of paraphrasing what I've got written here. But what you will learn will be enough to make you great. And I'm not sure there's enough time to learn everything to make you truly great. However, it takes dedication, stubbornness, and willingness to put a great deal of time into learning what we will need to become part of this wonderful recreation. And I'm not telling you that calling is easy. I'm telling you, if you want to be a caller, you've got to learn to work at it. You can't just buy 4 or 5 records, memorizing a few calls, stand up there and say, today I are a caller, because, well, just because. It just doesn't work that way. Larry asked me to say something about CALLERLAB. Actually, I think most of you got a little handle. I'm not sure about this and how CALLERLAB is structured and so forth. But to put it in a nutshell, CALLERLAB is made up of callers who are willing and calling for clubs, and these are the membership. The board of CALLERLAB is made up of members who have the recognition of their peers and are willing to place their names for positions on the board. They need 25 people to sign a thing. I think there's one going around right now for somebody who wants to go on the board. And then by secret ballot of all the members of CALLERLAB, a group are voted on it, and they become the new board by majority vote. You're on the board for 3 years. The first time the board meets after the elections, during the sessions, the chairman and the committee and members are selected by ballot vote. It's a very simple description, really, how the board is elected. An executive committee is selected by vote of the board members, and they meet twice a year to deal with important issues as rises through the year. We also have a head office in Florida that consists of an executive secretary and the necessary staff to run it from day to day. If you wish to find out more about that, you can go, if you have the ability to go onto our equipment to go onto the website. It's callerlab.org, and it tells you everything about it. And that about covers the initial presentation.
Thank you, Martin. As we explained to you, this is a trial run session, so we're going to need lots of input back from you guys as
Good
we go.
input.
All input is good. Some is better than other. And a lot of comments. Patty does have some other things ready to go. You want to do the first two, breaking the activity and the business side? Okay.
So now let's get into some helpful tips. We are going to post these lists both off of my website, and Martin's going to post it off of his. Mine will be www.p as in Patty, K as in Kennedy, G as in Greene, designworks.com. I have a button on the sidebar called Square Dancing, and if you click on Square Dancing on the home page, I will put a link to the CALLERLAB presentation, so you don't have to remember other stuff going down. And Martin?
My web is Sask, S-A-S-K, Square Dance, all one word, .sk.ca. And it's actually a directory of everything that goes on in our province, along with a lot of information about square dancing and links to other areas. And I will make a link in there of this, so you'll be able to get it and print it off.
Sask, Square Dance, sk.ca. Okay.
So you can find it on both of their websites. I'm going to take this printed material home, lay it on my monitor. If you want it, just call me. I'll mail you a copy.
Actually, we also are linked to our Canadian Square and Round Dance Society, and you can go to every province in our country, and most of the clubs in our country. It's a full directory of square dancing in Canada. So I'm only putting that in because I happen to be the vice chairman of the Canadian Square and Round Dance Society.
Nice plug. Very nice. Okay. First topic is breaking into the activity. I know that that's very difficult for new callers in a lot of areas because they're seeing, it's not necessarily a glass ceiling, but, there's some dues you have to pay, and it's not so easy to get clubs to hire you. They don't know who you are. They don't know what you can do. Can you do nothing? Can you do something? So here's just some things to think about how to break into the activity. Join your local calls association. Network, network, network. If they don't know you're out there, they don't know you're calling, they don't know they can hire you. Be willing to pay your dues with some sweat equity. You can't just bust in and say, I'm a caller now and I'm great, so hire me. Volunteer being the operative word, at festivals, regional dances, conventions, wherever you have an opportunity to call your best singing call, volunteer as you're starting out. Carry your best singing calls and a microphone in the back of your car when you go to events, just in case. Don't ever show up at another caller's dance expecting to call, but be prepared. The other caller probably knows that you are a caller. There's nothing more, as a caller, often have new callers at my dancers now, and no matter who they are, there's nothing more annoying than for somebody to come in that door with their briefcase expecting to call a tip. Because I, as an experienced caller, I can say that now as an experienced caller, I am responsible for the enjoyment of these dancers at my dance. And if I don't know you, and I don't know that, it's not a matter of not liking you or not trusting you, but I need to know that you're going to get up and treat my dancers well. When you are presented with an opportunity, make sure that you do your best, most comfortable material. Don't get up there and do a hot shut patter if these people don't know who you are. Kill the floor to impress the caller, because you know what? The caller doesn't matter. It's the dancers who are going to say, hey, I was at Larry Cole's dance, and this guy got up and did a tip. His name is Martin Mallard. Boy, he did a really good job. We could understand him. We danced. He's got a great singing voice. He picked a song that was great for his voice. He's a new caller. Yeah. Well, because the dancers don't know that that's the only singing call you have in your box. Do they? They have no clue. So it's very important that you do your best stuff. You may be great in your mind, but you must be humble. You must be humble. If you go in, ball of fire, new caller, I watched a lot of my peers who were learning as I was go in, and they turned off a lot of dancers because some of them were not great. In fact,
Patty has just about covered anything, but I'll tell you the surest way not to call in the club I call for is to come in the door with your record box or your briefcase, walk up on the stage and flunk it on the stage and say, I'm a caller.
You got to pay your dues. You won't get hired there for a long time. No, you won't get asked for much. No matter that where you are as a new caller, until people start to know you and they start to be a little bit more forgiving, appearance is half the battle. As a new caller trying to break into an area, if I show up at a dance and I haven't showered and I got really ratty clothes on and I'm just they're gonna. But if you show up looking professional and you're polite and you don't even have to say anything. You just have to be polite, clean, and look like you can hold your own. They're going to remember you. And the last thing about breaking into the activity is remember that callers and dancers are people. They have lives out of square dancing. Make a personal connection with them. As you are starting to go out to dances and being introduced as a caller, which is always kind of exciting, the only allowance I would make myself at announcing that I was a caller is when you sign in. Usually clubs have a sign-in sheet at the beginning. I would make sure I would put Patty and Steve Greene, caller, Salem, New Hampshire, wherever I was living at the time, Deering, New Hampshire. Now the club knows you're a caller. They now know. They will introduce you as a caller, so you'll be all set. The rest of the time, just make a personal connection to these people. You don't have to tell them you're a caller. Just find out something that they do. Make a personal connection. Make them want to know you, and you'll find that they'll start to hire you. Anything else? Breaking in?
I'd like to say something.
If the club doesn't know you're a caller. You're telling them you're a caller is not impressive. If you haven't established some kind of reputation that at least some of the people there know that you are a caller of whatever year's experience, you making a big deal out of it and telling them is not really impressive. You know, it doesn't do you any good that way.
It's arrogant.
And don't forget, if someone comes to my dance as a newer caller, it's not my final decision whether or not they get put on. I take it to the club, because the club hired me for the dance. If I'm going to give away part of that dance, I need the club's blessing. Now, I may take it to the club and ask, or I may not. It depends upon whether I know you, know how many times you've been put on, how many places, know that you've done the same singing call the last 27 times you got put on, those kind of things. You know, that figures in also. But that final decision has to come from the club, because I signed a contract with them to do the dance. So if I'm going to not do part of the dance, they have to help me make that decision and tell me what they want to do. And many times you have 3 or 4 callers show up at one night. That's tough. You know, you can't put all 4 of them on one tip. If you put 2 on a tip, then you got 2 tips out. If you put 2 on, leave the other 2 off, that doesn't work out real well. So you should really not go in expecting to get put on. You should go in expecting to publicize yourself in a very pleasant way. Speak to the caller that's there, but don't follow him around all night. You know, let it be known that you're there. Say hi, say, hey, we came to dance with you, you know, heard a lot about you, so on and so forth. But you have to sell yourself quietly. But when I'm doing the dance, it's the club's last responsibility whether I do or do not put somebody else on. Pardon?
Most of the clubs that I call for are either executive run, and I'm on a year-long contract with them. I do club calling mostly now. I've done a lot of traveling, and what he says, if you're a traveling caller particularly, it's my policy, I do not put anybody on the mic with me. If it's a one-night thing or a weekend, no, I wouldn't even consider it. But in the club, most of the clubs I call for as a year-long contract, they give me the option to, if a caller comes in, but I will never put more than one. Now, the thing I was going to say, I have to tell you this because it's rather cute in a way. I did not know Patty except by email. She did not know me except by email. Last night, we were sitting, my wife and I were sitting downstairs on the Chesterfields. Patty came in. She sat down very quietly. She knew who I was. I didn't know who she was. And she sat there looking very pretty, very gentle, and I wondered, who in the hell's that?
Got him fooled.
She sure did. But you know what? I did recognize her finally. We got together. We sat and talked for how long? 2 hours? About an hour. Neither one of us talked square dancing. We got acquainted. And that's the thing you have to do.
There's nothing more boring. I shouldn't. This will be on the tape, and I mean this. My name is Patty Greene. I'm from Salem, New Hampshire. There's nothing more boring than to go to an event and see another caller and have them talk choreography till you're blue in the face.
I want to know that.
There is a time and a place for hashing out choreography and making sure everybody knows you're a caller. The other part of it is let them find out who you are. Find out who they are. Did you guys know, you know what I learned last night? And now I'm going to remember Martin forever. I may never, and I'm not saying, I may never see him again, I may never do whatever, but when I think of Martin now, last night I found out, and this is no word of a lie, that Martin invented canola oil. How many is it? He was on the research team. He was the research team that invented canola oil. Now, if he and I had sat there talking choreography for an hour, I would never know that. But now we have a personal connection. That's very important. And if you want to break into something, you got to make that personal connection, I think. And that moves on to the next topic, which is the business side of calling.
You got one thing here I wanted to talk about. You say carry your best singing calls and microphone in the back of your car, leave them in the car, bring them in if you're asked to call. Bring your own microphone. I work right on top of my microphone, and I really don't want you slobbering in it. And heaven forbid that you'd want what I just slobbered in it. But I work right on top of it. Also, I can no longer buy the microphone that I use. I use a 967, which is a flathead microphone, sucker voice across the top. I was able to buy a used one a while back, so I have 2. You can no longer buy them. You can no longer get them repaired. It's probably 5 times hotter than any other electric voice microphone. It works absolutely wonderful for me. I don't want anybody dropping it. I cringe when the club president insists on using it to make announcements and hands it off to 5 other people who drop it like a relay. You know, so At one time, years ago, it was like, no, you don't plug anything in my PA set, you don't touch my wires, you don't do anything. That's not right anymore. You bring your own microphone in and plug it in when you're asked to call. You should be able to feel as comfortable as you can when you're asked to call, as well as let the person that's letting you call feel as comfortable as they can by bringing your own microphone to do it with. You have something else on that?
There's one little thing. I've been heavily in electronics, too. That's part of my job. One thing about a microphone, it has a thing on it, just like a speaker. You've seen the cone of a speaker. When you use a microphone, and you use it a lot, it develops characteristics of your voice. If you take that microphone and examine it under high-power magnification, you will see soundtracks in it from the usage of the person that's using it. My mic might not suit you because it has been imprinted with my voice patterns. So bring your own mic, and you'll know that you've got a thing there that's going to recognize your voice, particularly if you've been doing considerably calling with your own mic, and it's very important.
And as you become more accomplished as a caller, as a caller, and if you get dances and you're putting people on, or if you're working, whether it's a round dance queuer working with you, please don't become one of those callers who won't let the queuer or the other caller touch the knobs on your set. That is ridiculous. Those people are allowed to make their music and themselves sound as good as they think they possibly can. Just because you're providing the equipment doesn't mean that you should tell everybody else they can't turn its own controls and things. That is ridiculous. And I know callers who will not let queuers touch those. And that's just plain not good. You know, there's no point in doing that. Yeah. Queuers will start. A lot of queuers have started bringing in their own stuff because of those kind of things. And that's not necessary sometimes to have. You know, I've got halls that I call in. There's only one place that you can put a speaker and sound that hall right. If you both bring in equipment, one of you ain't going to get that spot. You know, and I get tired going to dance 2 hours early so that I get it. You know, just share the equipment and be nice to each other. You're going on now to
the business side.
Business side.
We decided to put the ones that, people don't usually talk about at the beginning, just in case we're out of time. So the business side, because as a caller, if you're going to treat this as a business, there is a business side. You are running a business, even though it may not be Patty Greene Squared Ant Calling Enterprises. I'm still running a business. So just a couple of tips and tricks that you might not have thought about. Every single piece of paper that you generate for your business card, correspondence, flyers, letters out to people, must look professional. That does not mean expensive these days. We had a caller in our area a couple years ago. He was trying to break back in. He sent out a mailing to all the clubs in the area. It looked like there were, first of all, typos. It looked like it had been mimeographed on one of those drum rollers, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. People got that. Now, they don't know who he is. They got that piece of paper, and what's their first impression of him? He doesn't care. If he doesn't care enough about... We did printouts for up here. If it's professional, people are going to look at it. And it doesn't mean expensive. It does not mean expensive. Respond in a timely manner to information requests. You are a business. If somebody calls you to hire you, respond in a timely manner. Don't keep them hanging on for a month, because eventually people are going to not call you. They're not going to call because then they can't rely on you getting back to them. Keep track right from day one of your expenses and income. In the States, you got to declare it on your income tax, if you want to get into that. But get into the habit right now, even if you don't really think that it's going to be something that's going to be a business for you, keep track of that stuff. Talk to your accountant. We have an accountant do our taxes now. He's been a lifesaver, because you can write off mileage. There's small business. Anything in that small business guide that the IRS puts out applies to us. But start keeping track of that so you know how you're doing, what you can spend, so it doesn't become a money pit for you. Get a permanent email address. Unfortunately, I know. Unfortunately, these days, a lot of stuff is done. I get a lot of my bookings by email. Sometimes I never see somebody who's hired me until the day I show up at their event. And if you're going to be putting your email address on things, which I think is business card, letterhead, anything you put out, if you don't I own a domain name, PKGDesignWorks.com. I no longer use ATTBI for my business because it was media1.net, attbi.com. Now it's going to be comcast.net or some foolish thing like that. So if I've passed out a business card 2 years ago, and somebody happens upon that business card and says, "Oh, we heard her at that festival in Canada. We really liked her. Let's try and get in touch with her. Let's do it by email." They may never get in touch with me if they don't think to look up a current thing. So it's very important. And it's very easy to get a Hotmail account or a Yahoo account or something that isn't going to change when your provider changes. Keep track of your schedule. This is a no-brainer. Keep track of your schedule, either paper, spreadsheet, or database. But keep track of your schedule. I have all my stuff on computer, but I still have a calendar, and it is my Bible. And in that, I can print out all the flyers I want with the schedule of where I'm going to be. But in that calendar, I have a name, a number, where I am, and what the level is, and a location, just in case I won't let go of that paper and go to that PDA thing. Remember to schedule personal time. As a new caller, I know I did. I took anything that was thrown my way. Absolutely anything. Didn't matter if it was 10 weeks in a row, 7 nights a week. And for a period of time, I was very busy, and I never saw Steve. You know, that was probably a bonus to him. But I also found myself, I was in 3 hours on Friday night, come back 3 hours, 4 hours on Saturday night, and 2 hours on Sunday, and that's crazy. There's no need for it. Book in some personal time. If you say the third weekend of the month is going to be for me and my family, don't compromise on that unless you give something up on another week. And also, on the business side, don't book an event that you're not ready for. If somebody calls you and says, "I need you to substitute, hey, I know you're calling, I'm in a jam, I have a mainstream dance on Saturday, it's, extended mainstream, or I have a plus dance on Saturday," or whatever. If you don't think you're ready, there's no shame in saying, "I'd really like to, but, I don't think I'm ready for it." If they've called you, they already think you're capable, and if you're honest with them, it'll go a long way into being hired the next time, because a personal experience, I called for a dance in New York. It was a mainstream plus dance. They have this big festival, and it's mainstream plus an advanced. I'm not an advanced caller. And it would have been a lucrative thing to call at this festival. They really wanted me there. But I would have to call advanced. I don't call advanced. I don't want to call advanced right now. I said no, because I don't want them thinking that I'm an advanced caller, because I'm not. And I don't want to misrepresent myself as something I'm not. So if you're not comfortable with it, the opportunity will come again. Because the flip side is, if you take that mainstream dance, and maybe there's 3,000 dancers there, it's just one of those anomalies, and you crash and burn, they're going to remember. Because if you're a substitute caller, if they came to see Johnny and Sammy is up there, now you already got a strike against you, because they're expecting this other person. And if you don't do well, it's going to be a long time before those 3,000 dancers recommend you to their clubs or their local areas. So don't take anything you're not ready for.
You might, as long as you're on the business side, you might think about that if you're getting into calling, at some point you're probably going to get into an IRS audit. It just seems that we get flagged pretty easy. I went through one. I was very fortunate. They only wanted to see two things. They wanted to prove money coming in the door, and they wanted to prove the mileage that I was showing. They don't like it if you write down I drove 150 miles to such and such and back. They do like it if you show them odometer readings, where you left and when you got back. They really don't seem to think that we can add and subtract and come up with that number without showing them the odometer readings. Show them odometer readings, they get real happy real quick. Now what she wanted to do was she took my calendar, which I post those in, and she found 3 months, and she ran an average of those 3 months, and she said, "You don't have that many miles." I said, "Well, not the way you did it, no, because you picked 1 month that I'm average busy and 2 months that I don't do hardly anything. You missed the 3 months that was 4,000 miles a month. You can't do it that way. If you want to check my mileage, you're going to have to check every month." She went back, checked 2 or 3 other months, said, "Okay, I buy that." She checked my money coming in. She wanted to see where that came from, such and such a dance night. Did I show money from that? So on and so forth. And that was the only two things they flagged on me. I got very fortunate. I know other people that they wanted to see absolutely, positively everything. And we're not going to sit up here and tell you what to deduct and not to deduct. That's between you and your tax consultant and how far you want to go with that. But there are things that you can deduct, and if you're going to do this on any kind of regular basis and you're going to spend money doing it, then you should be able to get back through your taxes what you're legally allowed to get back. If you have to report the income, you should then make plans to be able to get to the deductions. It's silly not to do that. But you need to work that out with whoever your tax consultant is, because it changes, and as well as you know, each tax consultant has a different idea. So we're not going to sit up here and try to tell you what to deduct and what not to deduct. The part that she meant, that she talked about not booking an event that you're not ready for, is critical. And you can just simply tell the people that right now I don't think I can do for you what you need for that event. I appreciate the offer, but I am concerned that you have the best event that you can, and I don't think I can produce that for you right now. They'll remember that later, that you were good to them and steered them correctly. They won't write you off because you turned them down. What was the thing you said about ethics, Martin?
Ethics is a hard thing to teach, and it's very hard to define. My son is in an investment business, and he's doing a lot of organizational work right now, and he's very strong on ethics. And I turned to him and I said, define ethics. And he did it so concisely. I was telling these two about it. It's doing the right thing when nobody's looking. Think about it.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
The next one we got on our sheet is getting records, and it's not the kind that you post your dances and things on. It's the little plastic ones that you use. Patty's worked up some things to go through. The first says, have a listening session with experienced callers, someone who has your musical taste or voice range. They may be willing to let you spend an afternoon playing through their records and writing down the one that strikes your fancy. That's a very good way to go. If you've got a caller that's willing to work with you and let you come over to their house and go through records and play with those, and let that caller help you decide what appeals to you, what works for you, and teaches you a little bit about choosing music and choosing what kind of music. There's lots of square dance music out there of all qualities, and you have to decide what works for you. And my general rule of thumb was that no more vocal talent than I ever had. I didn't want to use a record I had to carry. I wanted the record to carry me. That's the kind of music that I looked for. Good, full-bodied music, well done, that would carry me along, not something thin, even though it may be a popular song, that I had to vocalize and carry the piece of music. Why would I want to have to carry the piece of music? The music should be carrying me. If I have to make the music sound good, it must not be giving the dancers much to dance to either. At dances, you go up, you hear something that you like, go up and ask for the label and the record number. And if you can get a chance to hear it again before you buy it, that's a good practice. Sometimes you can get batches of records from callers who are no longer calling, or who are wanting to get out, or who are wanting to clean out their file cabinets. Sometimes callers will know that you are new, and they'll give you some records. Here's 5 records. Try these. Throw them away. If they're any good, they wouldn't have given them to you. And I think all that usually happens with that is that we end up getting led down a path, because if the record had any salt at all, I guarantee you ain't nobody going to get rid of it. I can still name 3 that I got rid of the third year I was calling that I'd like to have back. Since then, I haven't got rid of any. They're just stacking up there and getting higher. But free records seldom really help you as a brand new caller. You really have to get something that really sounds good that you can work with. If you can purchase batches of them, for somebody that's going out of the business for a few bucks, that's different, because probably in there are some good ones. Go for quality, not quantity. If the place on your desk where you put the records that you buy until you get ready to use them eventually reaches the ceiling, possibly your selection process is off. changed your mode of selection until that stack comes down a little bit, because somehow you're probably choosing incorrectly. If you love a record and love the way 3 or 4 other people do it, but it's really out of your range and you don't sound good using it, you probably shouldn't use it. Just because when Sam uses it, it sounds good. You know, when Patty uses it, it sounds good, doesn't mean that the dancers hear them in their mind when you squawk through it. So you have to really think about what you're doing. I lost track as a newer caller how many records I bought because what the other guy did with them sounded good until I finally figured out what was going on. Subscribe to a tape service. Tape services are wonderful. You can usually get samples from all of those guys until you can decide the one that you really like. And I think the neatest part about them is you can pop them in the car while you're driving, and you know, they're good to listen to on the way to the dance, and then they're good to keep you awake on the way home because they ain't all good that's on there. But you can play those over and over and over and over again until you decide about that record before you buy it. But if you can get somebody who calls in your area who supports you and get them to spend a few hours, a few times a month or whatever, working through singing calls with you, working through music with you to help you learn how to choose music and how to understand what you can do with it, that's really very, very good. You can take music and completely change what you have dancers doing on the floor. A good example of that is if any of you were ever involved in roller skating, the different music that's played at a skating rink during the different times that people skate, look at the different things that happen. Sometimes they're fast, sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's graceful, sometimes it's erratic. The skaters didn't select those styles themselves. The music dictated to them what to do. You need to flip. The music dictates to our dancers what we're wanting them to do. If you're using a nice flowing piece of music for a patter record, then you're going to get your people to dance a nice flowing style of patter. If you're using a very helter-skelter, active piece of patter music, and you're trying to do an intricate workshop at the same time, those people's mind do not have the capacity to workshop the material, listen to your instructions, and hear that rattly-tat music all going on at the same time. If you're giving them some easy choreography that you want to make maybe a little bit driving, then you can use the rattly-tat music. If you're giving them intricate workshop material that they really need to think about and listen, then you need some flowing music in the background that allows them to just relax to that part, but yet still have something to dance with. The music that you select is absolutely the most important thing going for you. And how you use that music and when you use that music. You can set moods, you can drive those people up a wall, you can cling them on the ceiling, you can lay them on the floor, you can make them happy, you can make them sad. You have until the last tip of your dance to save your can. You can have 7 really miserable, lousy tips, but if you hit the 2 right pieces of music for the last tip and you don't forget the words and you put on something that people know and can sing with, you're going to live. But if you don't, you're dead. But music just can do so much for what we do with dancing, and you can create moods for those people, and you can just do all kinds of things that they don't even know is happening just from choosing music. But choose good music. Choose music that sounds good. Choose your records wisely. Make them work for you. Can I say something about that? Yeah, your own right. Great.
Not only is the music effective, very, very effective, it's one of the best tools you've got, but you actually possess the best tool, and that's your voice. If you go out there and you've had a fight with your wife, and you come on and say, "Hello, man, left with your left hand," they know you've had a fight with your wife. Or with your partner. I mean, men do that, and women do that too. We try very much before we go out, and Terry and I travel together. We try very much to make sure that we don't have any discussions before we go out. That's one of the things. But the other thing is, your voice can change the mood of a floor. I mean, if I turn my back to you, I want to show you something. I'm going to stand up here, and I'm going to turn around. And I'm going to continue talking, and I'm going to do something that changes how I sound. Does anybody know what I've done? Did it sound different? I smiled. And that changes your voice. If you put a smile on your face, you can't help but put a little snicker in your voice. Like you're happy. Funny as that might seem. I've had a lot of voice training in my years because I was on stage a lot as a boy, and that's one of the first things he taught us. Smile when you're talking. Get a little bit of a lilt. Learn how to project. Don't put your head down like this and talk into the mic because your voice disappears down here. Get your head up. And you'll sound different. Believe me. You'll be talking with that person back there without... I can talk to you with... do not know how to project their voice without strain. If I put the mic up when I'm talking like that, I'll take your head off. But truly, even with the mic, you need it.
So the blank space on the tape was Martin giving a demonstration of projecting without the mic, and it was quite well done.
Thank you. But your attitude behind the mic, I think Patty said something looked neat. I want to show you something else. And this is mostly for the men because girls don't call with pockets. No. I did this purposely.
He's giving a demonstration.
What I have is a pocket full of stuff.
He has a pocket full of rattly stuff. Boy, does he have a pocket full of rattly stuff.
And I did this purposely.
I can't imagine. He's got two. He's got nail polish. He's got change. He's got a box of something. A half a dozen papers.
Can you imagine what the dancer sees when I come up here with all this junk in my pocket?
He's putting it back in his pockets.
Can you imagine what the dancer sees?
Yeah, it looks like chipmunk pockets now.
The only thing I actually need to carry with me is that.
And all the other stuff was just for effect.
Put it in your briefcase when you get on stage.
There's something else should never go in your pocket. Your hand.
Unless you're blind and calling by braille.
Okay. Yeah, that was something about blind and calling by braille. Would you do the equipment tips and tricks?
Okay.
And hopefully without your pockets.
Equipment tricks and tricks. Know that if you have your own PA system, know how to use it. Know what those knobs are for. Find out what they're for. Find out what makes your voice proper. And this, I have to say, Patty did a wonderful job for us. A good portion of this that we're talking about here was done by Patty, just thinking off the top of her head as a new caller. And these are things that she has learned in the last, 7 years you've been calling, Patty? And guys like us take it for granted. But we had to stop and think. When Patty gave this to us and said, this is what I'm going to do, we said, great.
It's excellent.
It was like a breath of fresh air. Anyways, if you were stranded on a desert island, what was the most important item in your equipment bag that you would not want to be without? I'm not sure about her the way she makes the comparison on a stranded island. Yeah. Inflatable boat, that's not on the list. But you need somebody to row the boat. Okay. Always carry spare batteries if any of your equipment needs batteries. There are a lot of microphones on the market that are very, very good, but they have a battery in them. I have one you can drive nails with. And literally, I mean that. I can drop it on the floor, I can kick it around, nothing happens to it. It's an electrostatic mic, it costs me darn good money, but if I'm in a place where other guys are using that microphone, that's what I put out. I keep my own. Anyways, always have a good mic. Don't go out and buy some cheap thing from Radio Shack. If you're going to be a caller, make sure you have usable, good equipment. And this one is really good because a lot of halls, particularly if you go into small towns, do not have the 3-prong plugs. Or they have the little 2s. Most of the calling equipment now has got the little ground plug on it. It's got 3 plugs on it. Carry an adapter. Make sure you carry enough extension cord to get across the hall.
That's not what that says. That says always have an extension cord in the back of your car.
Yeah.
I tried that. That sucker popped out of the wall every time I got 5-6 miles from home.
I like that. Anyways, if you can only spend money on one thing, start with a microphone that suits your voice. There are many of these sound firms will allow you to try a mic. Take your equipment down to them and try it. Or get in touch with Bill Hyman. He'll send you a mic to try. If you don't like it, send it back. Tell him to send another one. Make sure your partner or someone that you trust listens to your first tip. And that doesn't necessarily have to be in the hall. It can be done at home. You have to learn how to balance your voice and music. And if your equipment has a little thing that goes up and down on the side or has a meter that goes like this, find out what it's for. There has to be a balance between your voice and the music, and your voice should override the music a certain percentage so that you're clear. Learn what the bass and treble do. You've got equipment. Don't be afraid to use it. Don't be afraid to vary the speed on a record. Sometimes a very minor change in the speed can make a difference in how it dances. There are records that are out there that are mood setting. You will find that some records are done in flats, and they sound just a little different. You can set a mood. Halloween, there's a lot of Halloween records that have the key is set differently that sort of sets a spooky mood. There are music that have I call them ballads, and there's some that are ballads that are set in 6/8, and you feel like you're not sure which foot to put on the ground. And you're either going da-da-da-da-da across the floor, you're going 1, 2. If you find one of those, the first thing to do is trash it. Or sell it to somebody else. Give it away. What else can I put in here? You can be too loud. You can be. Most equipment that we use has more power than is necessary. Don't be afraid to be quiet. Sometimes, if you have the skill to use your voice properly, you can whisper to the caller and to the dancers. And I've done that with 40 squares on the floor, just whispered into it. And it's surprising how quiet the feet are. You can hear what I'm saying, I hope, and I hope this gets on the tape. But anyways, that type of thing can set a mood. How many of you have ever used the tune light in the window? You can actually do that in a very, very mood-setting fan, and it's beautiful. And there's a lot of them out there you can do that type of thing. By the same way, there's a lot of them you can prompt call. Learn to do different styles of calling. If you like some of these guys that are out there doing certain pieces of music, sometimes a little bit of imitation helps. I can imitate several different singers that are out there, and once in a while I use them. I take the high point of an ink spot once in a while, just for the heck of it, and everybody looks up and says, where did he come from? Anyways, you have to develop your own style, and that's part of using your equipment, part of learning to use your voice. Your voice is an instrument. Your PA system is an instrument. Is that what you wanted?
Yes, sir, that is. Martin made comment on here about get yourself a good microphone. You know, we got 3 pieces of sound equipment. We got a microphone, a PA set, and a speaker. I am a firm believer the microphone is the most important.
That's right.
If they can't understand and hear what you're saying, nothing else is going to work anyway. And I really believe that a microphone is the most important. You can go down to your local music store. You could go down to Radio Shack. I don't advise that. Also, don't advise your local record store, because they have some very good microphones, but they're not really designed or chosen for what we need. We need clarity of voice so that people can understand the commands. We may have to give up some other things to get that a true singer would not give up. Okay, see what I'm saying? So you need to go to a square dance supplier who knows what type of microphone to put available for you to buy and solve half of your problem when you first start. Patty, would you do teaching a class? Martin's going to do teaching a class? Never mind, Patty.
I got tossed into this thing because I made a statement when I came in. How many of you are currently teaching classes? I have a very, very strong opinion about this right now, and I'm a very opinionated person on it. One of the things I feel that we are losing, and I think it's a dilution factor, is because the first thing that should be taught to your dancers is how to move to music. We are in a little bit of discussion now between whether you say walk across the floor or dance across the floor. Our definitions actually define the walk that we use in square dancing. Part of our problem that we're seeing on the floor now, we don't hear the dancers. We don't hear their feet. We don't hear them moving in time to the music. How many have found that when you're calling? What we do when we're teaching, and I don't know whether you do it or not, we put them in a circle, either in squares, or if we have the room to put a big circle and get them walking single file. And we teach them to walk to the music, to dance to the music. Our definition says it's a sliding step. Now, again, will you give me the radio mic? Smart. I didn't realize we had a radio mic up here. I've been using it.
And new tricks.
Now, this is going to be a little interesting because I'm going to do something here that I really am not able to do. What I see when I see dancers dancing, that some of them are dancing for many years, they walk like I'm walking now. And that's how they dance. You tell them to do an Allemand left, they do this type of thing. Now, they're walking like somebody who's had hip surgery, which I had 7 weeks ago. And that bothers me when I see that type of thing, because they cannot possibly dance to the music that way. Our definition says that you walk on the balls of your feet and you slide them. This is what you hear. Hear the difference. Now that's one of the things that I find is not being taught by callers today. We are too interested in teaching movements. How can you do a movement, do it properly, without the proper timing, if you don't dance with the proper timing, rather, if you don't move to the music? That's what that music is for. And yet we see callers calling with no concern of the music, no timing with the music, and the dancers are not moving with the music. I've also seen the opposite thing. The caller's not calling in time in the music, but the dancers are dancing with the music. So somebody taught them to move to the music. But we, as callers, are teaching dancing, not close order drill. So keep it in mind when you're teaching. The first thing you should teach is how to move to music. The second thing you should teach is courtesy between the dancers. They have to be courteous to one another. You don't want to see them bashing with hands, doing the bumps, doing the twirls. That comes soon enough because the older dancers are going to teach it. It's not your job to teach that thing to them. If they're taught properly and those things come along, they won't use them because it's not comfortable. But if you don't teach them properly, they think that's part of it. So keep it in mind that the first thing you teach is move to music and a bit of courtesy between each other. When you do a courtesy turn, do it properly. Read your definitions and know what they do. Get a square of friends together. Because believe it or not, friends are probably the best people you have to teach. Because if they're a good friend, they'll tell you what you're doing wrong and they'll tell you what you're doing right. Particularly if they're good dancers. Don't be afraid to ask dancers to help you. Because there are many dancers out there that are only too willing to do it. You may not know them. Get to know them. Sometimes, and this is what we did, we were fortunate because this caller started this caller school and there were 10 of us there. And we all became good friends. He was a mediocre caller, I'll be very honest with you, but he's a very good friend. And we got together and we called with each other. And we set traps for each other. We had a ball learning to call. Anybody that showed up with a piece of paper in their hand, they were allowed to start, and then the paper was taken away at the most inconvenient moment that we could find. And they had to continue calling. Well, I can be miserable at times, just ask my wife. But seriously, working together, cooperation with another caller, even if it's not a good caller, or even if it's not, shall we say, a qualified caller, but 2 or 3 of you can get together, you know when he's doing something wrong, and you can help one another. We have an association in our area that is a caller dancer organization, and we work together. When we have a callers get together, but dancers come to it, and they're part of the things that we learn. It works very well for us. Shadow callers as they teach, if possible, go to a caller that you know is a good teacher. Even join his beginner's class. You might learn something. I'm saying join his beginner's class, but I should say hers or his, because we have both types of callers. No, I tell you, as long as I've been calling, there's always been some very fine lady callers. I won't accept that. There's always been ladies around that want to call. And there are lady callers, believe me. There are female callers, too, just as there are gentlemen callers and there are men callers. And if you don't know the difference, I'm not going to describe it to you. Be prepared if you're teaching a class. Don't come home from work at 5 o'clock, eat supper, have a shower, dash downstairs, get your record box, and go out to the dance. There's something you've forgotten. A very valuable thing is program. Keep track of your program. Know what you taught last week. Know what you taught the week before. If you are running the class, keep track of the attendance. You want to know if Joe and Mary were there. And if they don't show up 2 weeks in a row, phone them. Find out what happened. Maybe they're unhappy and they're not coming back, and you want to know why. My wife makes it a policy to phone them if they're away for one evening. If they haven't phoned and said we won't be there, she will phone to find out what happened. Because sometimes people have calamities in their life. And one of the things is patience. Never lose your temper. And again, I can tell you a very good story. Early in my career, my wife thought I should learn to play a musical instrument. And that's like teaching a dog to tap dance, believe me. Or a duck to tap dance. But anyways, she bought a Hammond organ. She paid for 6 months' lessons and said, you will take lessons. Which I religiously did. I mean, how many men can say no to their wife? So I'm taking these lessons once a week and trying to practice, calling 6 nights a week. And it was getting to be quite a load, working every day of the week, it seems. So after 6 weeks of lessons, I was learning to play the keyboard. I got going good. And she asked me to start using those things on the floor, the pedals. Well, I come home madder than a wet hen. So I told her, this is nuts. That night I had a beginner's class. And this thing was still, itching me. And I tell you not to lose your temper. I was teaching something that night, and one little fellow was having a problem. And I got snarly. And she come up to me. And I told my wife that I just wanted to learn to play the organ for fun. And she come up to me and says, Martin, these people here are just for fun. They don't want to be professional dancers. And that was a valuable lesson for me. Think about it. I mean, the people you're teaching, they're not there because they have to be there. They're there because they want to be there. And you're teaching them because you want to. That basic?
Thank you. We got 2 more subjects to hit, and then we should have a little bit of time for questions. Patty's got the next one marked as education and choreography. I think caller education is, to me, a very big thing. How many of you have gone to a full 5-day, 40-hour school? How many have gone to more than one? All righty.
How many have learned anything?
That's even better. I think it's very important that you go to at least one school. More than one would be good. I think it's important that you find a caller or two around your area that will work with you, somebody that you respect, you understand their calling, you know that they're doing a good job of calling and teaching, and you know that they're doing a good job of treating people right. Part of our calling is treating people right. There's some very, very good callers out there who can't treat people right. There's some guys and gals out there who can't call a lick, but treat people very well and have huge crowds all over everywhere. So if you can tie that together, you're in good shape. I'm sure then that most of you heard the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't overload yourself. Learn some of the basic choreographic tools. Chicken plucker, use it well. It seems like that's looked down on, like it's of no value. But I can sit down with you in 15 minutes or so and show you chicken plucker and things that you can do at every stage through that, and then you can rotate it a quarter and you can do it again, and you can rotate it a quarter and you can do it again, and you can call endlessly with nothing but chicken plucker, and the people don't know that you haven't done anything. And you've not got lost the whole time. For years, it's kind of been a standard joke that we research material. I research what Martin does, and I try to use it, and I research what Patty does, and I try to use that. And that's fine for all those people that call that research, and it's just plain flat stealing. That's the way I did it, and it worked well. But after you've stolen it, make sure you understand it, get your checkers or your computer program and work through it, and make sure that you understand it's going to work before you take it to the dance and put it on the floor. You might have missed one line, and then it doesn't look really good. So after you research it, be sure that you understand it before you use it. As you call, be sure that you develop the ability of understanding formations and have a formation awareness, so that after you call flip over the double flim flam, that you know where they're going to be, so you can call something next without having to wait 5 beats of music and have them stand there while you get your head on straight and call something next. As a really, really new caller, and that can be somebody that's still in the 5th or 6th year, you can still be a really, really new caller. Dancers want you to succeed. They want to help you succeed. They will be very entertained if you do right and left through, pass through, and bend the line all night long if you do it well. And if they see just a little improvement from time to time. They don't have to see a busload of improvement between Monday and Tuesday to continue to support you. They really want you to succeed. They want you to win, because if you win, they win. And you don't have to grow by leaps and bounds, but you have to grow intelligently. And you have to do things that dance nice for the people. I mean, you can call the fanciest material in the world, but if it doesn't work, it wasn't any fun. And if you have to stand there for 10 minutes and figure out where you are before you can call the next call, you haven't impressed anybody. But if you've called right and left through, pass through, and bend the line for a full patter tip, it flowed well, it timed well, it danced well, and you had good music, they're happy. They really just came to socialize anyway. Don't rush into calling plus and on down the line until you understand the basics in the mainstream. I remember when I started calling, there was a group of us that started all at the same time. And for the first 5 or 6 years, there was 4 or 5 people in that group that called circles around me, because I didn't understand things, and I went very slow. And what I did call worked, but for 5 or 6 years, they called circles around me. And when I hit my stride at about the 5th or 6th year and understood what was going on, I never quit. 20 years later, they were calling 5 and 6 year material because they never got beyond it, because their house of sand fell down. They didn't know what they were doing. They jumped right up the list someplace and started impressing everybody, but they didn't know how it worked. And you know what happens when you build your house on sand? It's going to fall down. Take your time and learn and understand what you're doing. Do some homework so that you know what you're doing, so that you go in prepared. Somehow program that dance, whether you write down a complete program on a piece of paper or a few basic ideas. But you can't just step up to the mic every time and wing it, because what you're going to wing is the very same thing that you winged the last 7 times you stepped up to the mic, and pretty soon all you got wing, and wing ain't the best part of the chicken. Or the duck. Think about how you practice. I know callers, both new and fairly experienced, that practice a lot, and I don't put practice down. But if you're home practicing in the basement to the water heater, The timing is different than it is to the people on the floor. And if you practice up that piece of patter music with what you're going to call, and you practice up that singing call with what you're going to call, and you make it sound really good to that music and to that water heater, and you jump up on the stage and you put it out to a floor full of dancers that ain't moving in the same speed and time the water heater was moving, you're in trouble. There is a difference. They all become water heaters and they don't move much. You have to understand in your practicing that you're going to be working with real live people when you get to the dance floor, and things are different. The floor is sticky. The floor is slick. It's hot out. It's cold out. It rained. It's a full moon. Don't call nothing hard with a full moon. Ain't going to work. Don't teach nothing with a full moon. Ain't going to work. Yeah, it's hairy. Be careful that you don't, I hate to say, but I really mean it, be careful you don't over-practice. You can't overlearn, but you can over-practice. You can be so practiced up that when you go put it on the floor to the people, you can't slow down and wait for them. You can't change it. You can't make it sound like a square dance. The whole thing sounds like a song. And a singing call is not a song. A singing call is some lyrics with some calling in it. And it should sound different. It should sound like a song when the lyrics are there. It should sound like calling when you're telling the people what you do. And there's a big, big difference. Be careful how you practice. Practice is good, but think about how you practice. Patty's going to do programming and showmanship, and then we're going to try to open it up and hopefully get some feedback from you guys.
Okay, I'm going to zip through programming and showmanship. Develop your own style. Period. Fill your record box with songs that you enjoy doing. There's nothing worse than being at a dance and having a caller put on a singing call that they hate. They don't like it. They're no good at it. It reflects. If the person next door does all country songs, you don't like country songs, well, then you don't have to do all country songs. Do things that you enjoy. I have big band, swing, rock and roll, country, current, old in my box because I like the music. If singing isn't your thing, accumulate singing calls that suit your voice and your style. If you can't sing a lick, then don't do Beautiful Noise. Pick a song that you don't really have to sing and showcase your voice, because they're going to remember that you really did Beautiful Noise really badly. Well, yeah, well, you know. Strive for a wide variety of music, because you don't know what piece of music is going to hook somebody into square dancing. You never know what's going to touch somebody off. Don't do all of your showstoppers in one program for a group as you start. Do a couple of showstoppers and the rest good songs. Leave them something you can give them the next time around. If you go to a new club and you only do your absolute best, lay them out on the floor, send them to the ceiling stuff, you have nothing to give them the next time. Leave them wanting more. Keep track of what singing calls you do where and vary your selections with the group that you return to. I do that. I have singing calls I like to do all the time, but I don't want to keep going back to the Wolf Rockers, and every time I go to the Wolf Rockers, I do the same 8 singing calls. They may not care, but I do, because I want them to know that I'm more than these 8 singing calls. There's hundreds of things you can do well. If a club advertises a theme, really try and do music that fits the flavor of the evening. It's a good way to force yourself to add new songs to your repertoire. It's a good way to be remembered, and it helps keep your programs fresh. I was hired for a club a couple years ago, and they had I think the first one was a 40s. They had a 40s theme. So I dressed in something 40-ish. Every single singing call I did was from the 40s or that big band era. I told them a little something about it. They hired me back the next year for a 50s dance. They hired me back this past year. I've done the 60s. This past year I did, I think it was the 70s, or maybe it was the 60s this year. For the 60s dance, I went online. I found out what the top Billboard top hits are of the 60s. No, it was the 70s. Went down through singing calls. I did them in order from 71 to 79. Gave them a little tidbit. Did you know that Donny Osmond charted on some goofy song that he actually hit the charts on? They're like, oh, really? I gave them something to go along with their theme. So now they hired me back for the 80s dance. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go through my record box. Every piece of music I do will be for the 80s. That is 5 extra dances they gave me because I did the first one and I paid attention to their theme. And it's fun. It's something different. just the biggest thing is develop your own style. If you want to be like Larry or you want to be like Martin, you can't. Because you're going to sound like somebody that's a wannabe. Yeah. I used to want to be Deborah Parnell. I can't be Deborah Parnell. I'm not tall enough. I'm not blonde. But I can't be her. All I can be is a bad imitation of her. But I can be Patty Greene. So find your own style. Fill your box with your music.
We got about 10 minutes. We'd like to open it up to you guys and see what feedback we can get. Bob, I do have 3 handouts. We have 3 handouts that really relate to nothing other than they're a random sample of the type of handouts that are available from the home office. You know, if you want anything particularly in the way of handouts, you can always call in and ask about things. What do we have from you guys in the way of questions or offerings? Or did you just sleep through the whole thing? We're going to use... John, did you want to run the mic around for us since you stepped in?
Ladies first.
Ladies first, probably.
Okay, first of all, I'm Lynn Webster from Minnesota, and I've probably been calling probably since, I don't know when, but one of the things I really appreciate them doing this kind of seminar. I appreciate them looking to the needs of newer callers. It'd be nice if maybe they got some kind of not necessarily a mentorship program, but a program where they could pair up newer callers with somebody like a Larry Cole when they come to CALLERLAB Convention so they don't feel so lost and left out. So I really appreciate that. And what they said is so true. I've been calling a little bit, and I've gotten some gigs, is what I call them, just because of what they say. You know, I like to try to get to the dance early enough to have my equipment set up so that I can spend some time welcoming the dancers as they come in the door, that kind of thing. So I'm not running around getting my equipment set up, and then I have to hurry up and get onto the mic. So that's my first suggestion.
Thank you. Nice stuff. Yep. Okay. Has somebody else?
Who's next?
Anybody else?
I'm Alan Hirsch, and I live in Colorado, and I just called a guest tip at a weekend dance, and it was in a bar. And the problem with it was the dance floor was in front of me, and we had one square on that dance floor. The second square was around the corner behind the speakers. And the way it was set up is because it was a guest tip, there was no way I can go down in front and see everything. Unfortunately, one of the female dancers in the blind square had a fall, and I saw nothing of it. And the square I was sighting on in the beginning, right in front of me, broke down. And I couldn't figure out why. So that's one of the things you have to watch out for, is be sure you can see everything that's going on the floor, so you can take appropriate action to help it.
I think that's a perfect example of what type of things you can expect to run into. The unexpected is just around the corner all of the time.
Okay, my name is Jack McConnell. I'm from Hendersonville, North Carolina. I've been calling about 4 years, and I stood up here to say something. I got volunteered to pass out papers, but anyhow, what I wanted to bring up, and they were talking about it earlier, and it's about singing calls. I had a terrible voice. My wife told me that I sang terribly. I got a voice coach. I got a voice coach. She was very, very good, and what she taught me, and I'm going to share the 2 biggest things that she taught me. Breathing, number 1. You breathe with your belly, okay? Breathe in. A good way to practice is take a timer and breathe in through your nose 4 beats. See, fill your belly way up. I mean, people can't see it when you're standing like this, so just don't stand this way, okay? And when you breathe out, hold it in for 2 beats, and then breathe out like this. And if you practice that, you can do it for maybe 20 seconds. So what happens is you learn how to, instead of singing 8-beat pieces of music, you can sing 16 or 24 without stopping. So it really works well. Breathing is very important. So that's just what I wanted to bring
You'll
up.
notice that all the callers who do this are well developed.
They're called diaphragmatic control vehicles.
Don't you look at me like that.
I'm not old. Anybody else have anything? Martin's got something.
In clubs that you may be calling for, and I hope you never have what happened to in one of our clubs. All our clubs, we always have somebody with CPR. We know if there's nurses in the crowd. We know if there's doctors in the crowd. When our dancers join a club, we try to find out what they do for a living. And if these people dance with us, we're very fortunate. In one club, we had a girl die. At the last swing of the last tip, she went down on the floor and she was dead before she hit the floor. But because this club had the medical people, we had nurses and we had a doctor there. My wife phoned the 911, and we had it well underhand. And it was quite an experience for me as a caller. I wondered if I had done it. It turned out she had a heart defect that she didn't know about. But the thing was there. Our people knew what to do. They'd been versed in it. How many of you have ever looked at the thing that's in CALLERLAB manuals and so forth? How do you signal that somebody's down on the floor? Yeah, somebody in there puts their hand up and you make a ring around them, so that they are protected from the people who are going to rush over to see what happened. That's the first thing. And you should have somebody in the club that is appointed to phone 911 immediately.
I was told the ring was supposed to face out. Is that
Face out, that's right.
Thank you. That was all I had.
The comment from the floor was that she was told that ring was supposed to face out when you make the ring around the fallen dancer, and that's true. Bob DeYoung?
Let's give this panel a big hand. I think this is great for a first seminar.
We thank you. It's nearly time for your break. Our panelists have been Patty Greene. She put together most of the program. And Martin Mallard. My name's Larry Cole. We thank you for coming in. If you have comments, good or bad, get them to the home office so we know whether or not this is something to do again.
One other thing, if you want to contact me by email, it's very easy to remember, sqduck@aol.com. Square duck.